Hey, it's Sarah, and today we're going to be going through my entire cookbook collection. We're going to do a big declutter. We're going to unhaul some of the cookbooks that I'm really not using anymore and we'd be better off passed on to someone else. And we're going to go through every single cookbook that you see in the stack behind me. So this is a total of 48 cookbooks. It's a lot of cookbooks, and it is too many cookbooks for me. There's a lot of things here that I know I'm just not using because I don't need them anymore. And there are also cookbooks that I'm not using because they're kind of buried in the sea of cookbooks and I really haven't taken the time to get into them, even though I really want to, because it's all just kind of overwhelming. So we're gonna go through them all today, and I think it's gonna be especially fun because I've never done this before. I've never done a declutter of my cookbook collection. I've never gotten rid of anything. So this is every cookbook I've owned from my very first cookbook all the way to books that I've purchased this year. So it's gonna be like a real journey to go through them and see all the different books that I purchased or that I was given or acquired at different points, from being a very new and beginner cook who was just getting started cooking for myself, to going to school to become a dietitian and working with food as part of my job, all the way up until this point. So we're gonna see a lot of different things here as we go through all the cookbooks. Now, as I go through the cookbooks, I don't have a certain number that I'm trying to get down to. I'm really just looking at each cookbook on its own. I just want to really see which ones make sense for me right now. And it's also going to be about how each cookbook fits into the overall collection as well, and looking at it as a whole, and what's going to be most helpful for me. So what are the criteria that I'm going to be using as I evaluate these cookbooks? Number one, which cookbooks that I'm already cooking from a lot. Obviously, if I'm using it all the time and I really enjoy it, that's going to be a cookbook that I want to keep. The second thing I'm going to be thinking about is what are the cookbooks that I want to cook from soon? So those would be the cookbooks that I have. They're great. I'm really excited about them, but I just haven't gotten around to actually sitting down and going through them and looking for recipes and really digging into everything that they have to offer. The third thing I'll be thinking about is cookbooks that have a sentimental value. So cookbooks are one of those things that can have special meaning to us, depending on how we got them, if someone gifted them to us, if they are passed down from a relative or something like that. So I'll be thinking about sentimental value. And then the fourth thing I'm going to be thinking about is if it's something that I use professionally. So this one is a little bit different for me because I do work in food and nutrition and might not apply to your average person going through their cookbook collection. But because I am talking to people, teaching them about cooking, helping them with dietary changes they may be wanting to make, it's really helpful for me to have cookbooks that are just for professional reference. Maybe it's to help me reference a certain type of cuisine that I'm not as familiar with, but I'm trying to learn more about and I want to be more knowledgeable in, so that I can be more helpful to someone who may eat from that particular cuisine. It could also be for the purpose of recipe development. I do develop recipes professionally, and having cookbooks that can teach me new techniques or be references for certain techniques or certain ingredients or certain styles of cooking can be really helpful for that too. So because I am working in food and nutrition, I'm going to be keeping some cookbooks that maybe I'm not cooking from all the time, but that are important for me in my work. So now that we've laid out the ground rules for how this process is going to work, let's get to it. I'm going to clear all these books off the table and we'll start going through them. And I think we'll put the keeps over here on this side in a pile, and then we'll put the unhaul pile over here, and we'll see where we end up. Okay, so the first section of the books we're going to go through is what I call the gardening and seasonal cookbooks. So these are ones that are related to cooking with the seasons, or maybe you're related to growing your garden and also cooking with the things that you're growing. So let's just start and go through them. So the first one we have here is the 4 Season Farm Gardener's Cookbook by Barbara Damrosch and Elliot Coleman. I don't think I've ever looked in this. I'm pretty sure this was a gift from someone, but I really have no idea what it is or how it would even be helpful or not helpful to me. So it looks like, let's see. Let's look at the beginning, shall we? Oh, so there is a whole gardening section. Part 1 is just about the garden, how to garden, different types of gardens. And then we've got types of dishes. Why grow your own food, how to grow your own food. This looks like it would be really good for someone who's just getting started with a garden or trying to figure out what they might want to do. But I don't know that it's gonna be super helpful for me as someone who is a little bit more experienced. And same with the recipes. Like a lot of this stuff are the types of things I think that I would just kind of make intuitively and wouldn't necessarily need a recipe for. I mean, they look great, but I think this is probably going to be best served by going on to someone else who could use it more. So we'll put this over here. Okay, next book. This is a great book that I don't cook from enough. It's called Local Flavors by Deborah Madison. It's all about cooking with farmers market produce. Now, what I don't love about it is that there aren't a ton of recipes with pictures. There are some pictures, but many of them don't have pictures. But one thing I love about it, let me see if I can find it. There's one particular recipe that I remember loving in here, and I actually haven't made it in a while. What I like, because this is, you know, based on the farmer's market and not just kind of general, like, this is in season in summer. There's some recipes in here for kind of the in-between. Some of my favorite times of year are the times between seasons when you're transitioning from spring to summer, summer to fall, because you have the most variety of things. You have the things from the previous season are, you know, still hanging on, but you've got the stuff for the next season starting to come in, and you can get really such a combination of a broad number of things. One of my favorite recipes from this book that I haven't cooked in a long time is called Shell Beans and Summer Vegetables Stewed in Their Own Juices. It's a very, like, you know, simple one pot dish. It doesn't require a lot of different steps, but it's just a lot of different vegetables. And I remember, yeah, a lot of basil, and it's all just kind of cooked together, and it's really delicious. So I really should be using this more, and I'm gonna put this in the keep pile. This one is called Grow, Cook, Eat by Lily Galloway. Another one that I haven't really looked at much, to be honest, but it says it's the food lover's guide for vegetable gardening. I think it seems like it's probably pretty similar to that other one we looked at. It's, you know, about using the things that you grow, but I don't know that it's anything that's gonna be super groundbreaking for me now that I am a more experienced cook. Probably better for someone else. So we'll put that in the unhaul. Okay, this is another one that I used to use a lot when I first got started cooking. This is one of my first cookbooks. It's the Cooking Light, Cooking Through the Seasons. And so it's divided up into spring, summer, fall, winter. I remember really liking it, but it's one of those cookbooks, like, I love this when I was in my kind of dieting phase, which is like, in some ways feels like another lifetime. And so I remember really liking it, but I wonder if I would really like it now. Would the things still hold up for me? All that kind of thing. But there were some good recipes in here. Let's see. Ooh, these pork chops look good. What's this recipe that I have flagged here? Some of the cookbooks I did do a good job of flagging things. Ooh, a ginger blueberry shortcake. Well, this looks delicious. I'm not sure how good it is, but I feel like this is one that I still want to kind of explore this and kind of see it through new eyes. So maybe we'll put this in the keep. Okay, this is another cookbook that's kind of like, I kind of feel 50-50 about. This is the Homegrown Paleo Cookbook by Diana Rogers. I do not advocate for the paleo diet, nor have I ever, but with that said, if a recipe tastes good and it happens to align with the paleo diet, that's fine. Like, I'll eat it if I like it, but I'm not trying to do this or promote it, if that makes sense. But I do remember liking a lot of recipes in here. This is another one that has some kind of gardening stuff in the beginning, but it's a lot of stuff about like growing your own like chickens and rabbits and stuff. Let's flip through here. I remember there being a soup. Yes, this Big Bad Rooster soup. I remember liking this a lot. It has chicken in it. It's a chicken soup. It also has fish sauce and soy sauce and a bunch of herbs. So it kind of makes me think of like the flavors you might see in Thai cooking. Oh, this is a butternut squash stew. Okay, I think this is a good one. There's several recipes in here that I've made and I like. So we're gonna put this in the keep. Okay, now I've pulled over a stack of books here that I'm gonna call the healthy eating and dieting section. So the first one we have here, I love this cookbook. This is the first cookbook that I ever got that was like my cookbook. So this is called The Food You Crave by Ellie Krieger, who's a dietitian. And this was when I was at the end of high school and I knew I was interested in learning how to cook. And I also had realized that, oh, there's this job called a dietitian. And you know, that seems like it might be a good fit for me. I was always interested in health and healthcare, and I thought I might have a job in that ever since I was little. But also I was interested in food, and I was interested in like dieting and weight loss, which is a true thing that happened. And it's not where I'm at now, but at the time I got this, that was definitely something that was on my mind. I saw Ellie Krieger on the Food Network, and she was a dietitian and she was doing recipes and food, and she had a cookbook. I was like, this is great, I gotta get her cookbook. And this cookbook is the beginning of me learning how to cook. Like, you might be able to see like the edges are all stained. I have cooked from this cookbook so many times, and some of the first meals that I made and thought like, oh, this is really delicious, came from this cookbook. It had the reputation in my family of like, if Sarah makes anything from this cookbook, it's gonna taste good. And even as I flip through it, like, there's so many stains on so many pages. It's definitely well loved, and I'm just seeing so many familiar recipes. Wow, this is crazy. I used to make some of these things all the time, and a few of them are still things that I make. So this is obviously a keep. And I would recommend this cookbook. I mean, it's not particularly diety, which I think is good. It does have nutrition information with the recipes, so if that's something that you would prefer not to see, then, you know, maybe skip. But the recipes are really, really solid, and I think there's a good mix of things for a beginner cook, as well as someone who is a beginner but is looking to stretch a little bit and maybe learn some new things too. This was great for me, and it's still great for me, so I'm gonna keep it. And in a similar vein, we have the second and third cookbook from Ellie Krieger. This one's called So Easy, and this one is called Comfort Food Fix. So, you know, I love that cookbook. When she came out with new ones, I was like, I gotta have them. So Easy, I did cook from a lot too, and I really loved a lot of the recipes in here as well. Oh, that one's a good one. Okay, this is already getting me inspired. Like, looking through these, I'm like, there's so much good stuff that I need to be making. Okay, so this one's definitely a keep, and this one is the one that I didn't really cook from at all. I think it was at the point where like I had a little bit broader view of, or a little bit, how should I say it? It wasn't that I wasn't interested in these cookbooks anymore, but I kind of had more options. I was more aware of other places to get recipes, and I wasn't just going to these books again and again because I was kind of looking more other places. So I didn't use this one as much. Ooh, but this, okay, the seafood section is really getting me. A lot of this stuff looks really good, and I do trust Ellie to make a good recipe. Okay, this is one, I'm gonna keep this too, because I think I should probably look in these. And these I like too, because I feel like they are good for someone who is like a beginner cook or doesn't consider themselves super skilled, because I feel like they're very educational. And that's one thing that I like about her cookbooks is, you know, you're gonna learn some stuff as you're going through them. So even as a reference, I think for other people in my work, I think all three of these will be good to keep. And it kind of makes me think like, does she have other cookbooks that, I'm sure she does, but I'm just not aware of them because I kind of wasn't paying as much attention after that? Something for me to look into. By the way, I'm gonna be listing all the cookbooks in the description. So if you're like, what was that or what, it's all there and you can see everything there. Okay, so next one is The Nourished Kitchen. This is by Jennifer McGrother. Farm to table recipes for traditional foods lifestyle. So this is kind of my like phase of like, maybe diets aren't great, but also like, how do you know what to eat? Maybe you should like eat the most natural stuff. because I definitely went through that kind of phase. So this cookbook is, I guess, about kind of a lot of, it says featuring bone broths, fermented vegetables, grass-fed meats, wholesome fats, raw dairy. Do not advocate for that. Like, pasteurization, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Keeps us from getting sick. And kombucha. So this is very much a moment, I feel like. This is like a moment in the food, healthy, nutrition, whatever, general culture ether. This is very like food blog, like learn the traditional recipes and you too will be healthy. But with that said, doesn't mean it can't have some tasty recipes in it, right? I'm seeing some mussels, bone marrow custard. Don't know that I'll be making that, but if you do, it could be good. Pickled tongue with mustard sauce. I think that's one reason I was attracted to this book, because it had recipes for things that I feel like are harder to come by, like different organ meats. This I'm gonna put in the keep pile, but I think this is a category of keep of like, I need to go through this, right? Like I can't make a decision now, it's not a definite no, but I feel like I need to sit down, go through it, flag some stuff, try some stuff, and be like, okay, does this stuff taste good? Are these good recipes? Because I don't know if I've made anything from it. So we'll put that in keep, but it's kind of, it's in an edit area. Like you may not make the final cut. Supernatural Every Day by Heidi Swanson. Similar vibe. It's a lot of like things that, not that they don't taste good, but kind of aren't my style of cooking right now. So I think this is gonna go in the donate. 100 Days of Real Food. This was a food blog that I followed a lot when it was popular. This is, again, a similar time to that. This was all about like this family that the mom decided we're gonna like eat healthy, and it meant that they had to like make everything from scratch and couldn't have products that had more than 5 ingredients. Very like Michael Pollan era. I love this blog though. It was definitely a moment for me. I think I read every post on there. And I mean, one thing I did like about her stuff is it was recipes for very simple things. It was definitely geared towards like, you're not a chef, you're not necessarily someone who thinks of yourself as like, oh, I love cooking, but like you want to know how to make some stuff maybe that no one ever taught you how to make because you grew up in a home that didn't cook. So I like that about it. And I think some of the recipes are good, but I don't need this cookbook. I know how to cook. I don't need it. Someone else may really need it, so this is done. All right, Oh She Glows Cookbook, over 100 vegan recipes to glow from the inside out by Angela Liddon. This is another blogger turned cookbook author. Again, a cookbook that I think I made a few things from. I was kind of excited about it, but didn't really, I don't know, didn't become a heavy rotation cookbook for me. I mean, there's some things in here that look fine, but also like, do I need this cookbook to have a recipe for granola? You know what I mean? Like, not necessarily something I need. I remember there was like a peanut stew in here that was really good that I liked. So yeah, I'm gonna put this in the donate. This may be one that I kind of go through before I send it off and like, just check, is there anything that I like want to look up or see if I could just print off the internet, or maybe it's you know, I try to make it and see how it is, but overall I think this is not gonna be a winner for me. There's only so much cooking you can do, and I don't think most of mine is gonna be coming from this. Okay, another key era in Sarah's life. Jillian Michaels' The Master Your Metabolism Cookbook. So fun fact about me, I was a Jillian Michaels super fan. I was a Biggest Loser super fan, and particularly a Jillian Michaels super fan. Again, feels like another lifetime. You know, looking back on that now, I can see how much damage that show did to just kind of the broader culture, promoting these fat-phobic ideas and this idea that like, I don't know, like fat people need your help, and the best way you can help them is to be abusive towards them. So it's kind of a double whammy there of not great stuff that we're trying to do. But with that said, at the time, I thought it was the best thing going, and I love Jillian. This is another fun story. Jillian was speaking at a conference kind of near-ish me, and I really wanted to go. And so for my birthday present, it was a big surprise. This is when Jason and I were dating. He got me and my mom tickets to go to this women's conference where Jillian was speaking, and it was like the best thing that had ever happened to me. I mean, I got to meet her, I got to talk to her, I was so excited. And that's, again, a true thing that is a part of my life, but it's certainly not the case now. So with all that said, I don't even think this cookbook is that great. Okay, so she came out with this book. You may not care to know this, but I'm gonna go through it anyway. Jillian Michaels came out with this book called Master Your Metabolism. And it was all about this idea of like, there are things you can do that affect your metabolism and like, you know, chemicals in the environment and all these things that you, the do's and don'ts and whatever. That was kind of the book. But then to go with the book, they put out a cookbook. It was like a little companion. And I think there was also a companion calorie counter. So the original book, I flagged that thing up and down with sticky notes. I was like, this is like a rich text of information and I must know it all. Again, so wild to think about now, but got the cookbook too. And even when I was super into it, like, again, they're diet recipes and they're not that great. Oh, this one I put in omit the walnuts. So, I mean, I took notes. I tried to make this stuff. I remember there was just like chicken satay with the peanut sauce or an almond butter sauce. But I even remember I used to listen to her podcast. Like, it was a whole thing. It was a whole thing. And I remember her talking about how, like, to make this cookbook, she basically worked with the chef who just, like, developed some recipes. I don't think they're her recipes, which, I mean, again, she's not a recipe developer, so it makes sense. But, you know, it's kind of like, I don't want to say a cash grab, but kind of a cash grab. Like, very poor quality paper, no pictures of anything, which makes the cookbook cheaper to make. And not that a cookbook like that can't have good recipes, but this is like that, and also the recipes aren't that great. So I'm gonna put this in the donate, but this also might be like a, I don't know, a historical relic. Like, I don't know that I would want anyone to have this cookbook, so I don't know what I'm gonna do with that. All right, this is the Healthy Family Meals from the American Heart Association cookbook. I think I got this when I was in school to be a dietitian from like a preceptor. Very kind gift and thoughtful, but not, I think, what I'm trying to cook from, and I've never cooked from it before. So this is a no. Moosewood Restaurant New Classics. So the Moosewood Restaurant is like a famous restaurant. And this is, I don't know the whole history of the Moosewood Restaurant, but I think it's like a lot of vegan recipes, also kind of like taking inspiration from a broad variety of cultures is what I remember from the recipes. Like, a lot of these recipes introduced me to flavors or types of things that I had never made before, which was cool, but I don't know that I'm gonna be making a lot of recipes from this. Like, if I want any of the types of recipes that are in here, I can probably find a better version. Apparently, on baked ziti with roasted peppers, I said, yummy, definitely make again. But I don't remember it. I think this is another one that's gonna go in the donate. It was good for a time, but not what I'm trying to cook from right now. Moving on, let's look at what I'm gonna call reference cookbooks. So these are books that are purely references, reference works, or mostly references. That's how I think about it, at least. So the first one we have is Cooking Ingredients by Christine Ingram. So I got this in college, I think, and it kind of goes through all different types of ingredients, herbs and spices, oils, fruits, nuts. It has some images in here of different types of things, kind of how you might use them, buying and storing. Look at this apples section, all the different types. This is one, I didn't remember this being this good. All kinds of different pastas and, I was thinking this might be a get rid of, but now that I'm looking through it, I'm like, this is actually pretty helpful. Okay, all right, this is a surprise keep. Let me scoop some of this over, trying to make it some more room here. Okay, this is the Foxfire Book of Appalachian Cookery, Revised Edition, edited by TJ Smith with a new foreword by Sean Brock. So the Foxfire books are like a series of books that aren't just about cooking. I don't have them, but I have some relatives that have them. But they're kind of like Appalachian, like food ways, but also life ways, and how to build different stuff and do different stuff. And it's a series, but this is all of the cooking stuff together, is my understanding. It came out recently. So I got this, and this I think is cool. It's just got a bunch of different old recipes. It's got some pictures, like how to, you know, cut up different fish. I love things like this. I love learning about different types of like old recipes and just, you know, how you do stuff. I think it's really cool. And this is definitely a key. I'll put this here. This is kind of related. So this is The Odd Bits by Jennifer McClagan. And it's called Odd Bits, How to Cook the Rest of the Animal. So it's all about cooking different parts of the animal that aren't like the muscle meat that many people go to or think of as the things that they want to eat. Obviously, that's not the case for everyone, but I think for a lot of people, especially now, things other than muscle meat, like organ meats, might feel unfamiliar, or even if they're familiar to you in terms of eating, you might think of them as something that you get at a restaurant or someone else makes for you, maybe that you don't make yourself. Everyone's a little bit different, of course, in that regard, but for me, it wasn't a type of cooking that I really learned or had a lot of personal knowledge with. I feel like it's kind of like a generation ago, at least in my family, of having that kind of knowledge or making those kinds of things. So this is really cool, and we're gonna keep it. Put it down here. Okay, this was a recent Christmas gift from the thrift store from my brother-in-law, and this is called Starting with Ingredients, Quintessential Recipes for the Way We Really Cook by Eliza Green. And she's thick. So this is kind of goes again by ingredient and then just has a bunch of recipes. I haven't made anything from this, but just looking at it, it seems like a great reference for me to have, even if it's just to learn about different things, not necessarily to cook from, but you know, to have professionally. So we're gonna keep that. This is the Bride and Groom Cookbook, Recipes for Cooking Together from Williams-Sonoma by Gail Peary and John Clark. And this was a wedding gift, which I think is really thoughtful. Like someone's getting married and they want some things about cooking, but it's also about like, I think entertaining and stuff, pairing different wines, which I don't drink wine, so not super helpful for me. Like how to plan a menu for a dinner party, things like that that aren't really things that I need. Well, this mussel recipe looks pretty good. But again, not to me going to be like the best version of any recipe in here is probably not going to be my go-to version. It could be, but I don't know that I'm trying to take the time to cook through all these to find out if they are. Also, interesting, I don't know. I feel like this is just not that it wouldn't be made now, but it's a little bit of an artifact of the time and how things can really change for the positive in a short amount of time, which is encouraging for me to think about, is that this is the Bride and Groom Cookbook, not like the Newlywed Cookbook or a couple's cookbook. It's the Bride and Groom Cookbook, because who would get married, a bride and a groom? Except not necessarily. So that's kind of an interesting point. But all that to say, this is not super helpful for me, but maybe someone else could enjoy it. This is The New Vegetarian Cooking for Everyone by Deborah Madison, which I believe this is a cat chewed on this, which is a reality. But this is also a very thick book, because that's why it's in my reference collection. It's just all types of vegetarian recipes by, again, Deborah Madison is the author of this one down here, Local Flavors, that we talked about earlier. And this is just great. It's divided by ingredient, I'm pretty sure, and like types of recipes and things like that. Just a great reference book, lots of recipes. There's no pictures, nothing, which again, it's not my favorite, but isn't necessarily bad. This book is about fitting as many recipes as possible, not having like 3-page photo spreads. It's just about giving you a bunch of recipes in, you know, still a big book, but trying to get them all in there. So this is great, and I will be keeping that. Next section is cookbooks that focus on a particular cuisine. And this is one of my favorite categories of cookbooks, especially as someone who is a more experienced cook, kind of generally speaking, and is always looking for ways that I can increase my knowledge by going really narrow into a particular topic rather than just kind of broadly looking at recipes. So this is something I think I'm most of the cookbooks I buy currently are kind of in this vein, either cuisine specific, or maybe they're like a technique or like category of recipe specific. So this is kind of one of my favorite areas to hang out right now, because it's just like you can learn so much specific information about one thing, and I love that. So the first one is Bottom of the Pot, Persian Recipes and Stories by Naz Daravian. This is like one of the most positively, widely regarded books about Persian cooking, which is why I got it. A lot of people consider it to be the best. And this is a newer one in my collection, and one of these ones that I would say is like, I've looked at it a little bit, but I haven't really taken the time to sit down and go through each recipe and flag stuff and figure out a plan. Okay, I want to get started cooking with some of these things. Where do I want to begin? So this is a keep, and like, spend some time with this book, Sarah. It's good. And you will like it. Another thing to say about when you have books about specific cuisines, I think it can be good for a beginner cook. It's not the route a lot of people take, but I often recommend it if you are a beginner, because if you don't have an extensive collection of spices, or you're not familiar with a lot of different ingredients, it can be intimidating to get started if you're cooking recipes from kind of all over the place, because they're all going to use a different mix of ingredients, spices, techniques. But when you focus on one cuisine, there's going to be a lot of overlap in the types of spices that you'll need from one recipe to the next, or different herbs or produce or meats or things like that, grains. But also there's going to be some techniques that are used more often in that particular cuisine, so you'll see that showing up again and again, and it helps you kind of hone those skills. So if you are a beginner, it's not the path that I took, but I think it can be a great way to get started, is to focus on a particular cuisine and just dive in. Next book is Zaytun, I don't know if I'm saying this right, by Yasmin Khan, Recipes from the Palestinian Kitchen. This cookbook, the cover is like, it's so beautiful. Look, it's kind of like embroidery, got a little pomegranate there. Love the cover. With that said, I haven't cooked from it a lot. Oh, the back is the same too. Look at those little eggplants. So fun. I haven't cooked from it a lot. It was a cookbook that I asked for, and it's one that is well reviewed, but I haven't spent a lot of time with it. Now, this cookbook, I'm pretty sure, okay, so it has some maps here, so you can kind of learn about the region if you're not familiar. Yes, so this is not from someone who grew up eating this food, but it's from someone who has spent a lot of time in that particular area eating that food and learning from the people who did grow up eating it, and know how to cook it. So that's just a thing to know, and if you are looking for cuisine-specific cookbooks, it's something to look into, and I think it may be a reason why I haven't used this one as much. It's kind of like written almost for an outsider, by an outsider, which can be good, I think, because you're getting, it's a certain perspective, right? Versus someone who grew up eating a certain cuisine and is from that culture, or from that place maybe. It's just something to know about, because that different perspective is gonna affect the recipes and what you're able to take from it, and it's just a little bit of a different view. So that is a tip I would give for cuisine specific. But yeah, I think this has some good recipes. It looks like I just need to spend a little more time with it, so we're putting it on the pile of the keeps. I think a lot of these are going to be keeps because it is an area that I'm so interested in. Okay, this is my latest purchase, so this is definitely a keep. It is Mi Cocina by Rick Martinez, and it is beautiful. Again, I feel like the cookbooks are getting prettier. I don't know. People are like, you know what makes people want to buy your book? If it looks pretty. This is all about Mexican cuisine, which I think is a cuisine that is familiar to a lot of people in America, because Mexico is our neighbor, but also unfamiliar in some ways. Like, I think it can get really kind of diluted down to a few different types of dishes or a few ingredients, the things you might get at like kind of your average run-of-the-mill Mexican restaurant, when just like any other cuisine, it's super broad and has a lot of variety and regional differences. And I think for a lot of people in America, we don't really get that. So that's one thing I was really excited about with Rick's book, and it's something that I've heard him talk about that he's really passionate about, is showing people all the nuance of a cuisine from one country, but there's so much variation in the types of things that people make outside of what someone who lives in America and isn't super familiar with Mexican cuisine or hasn't grown up with it as like their kind of family's cooking might not really know, and it's kind of getting lost. So it goes by region, which I think is cool, and lots of nice pictures. I will say, from flipping through it, one thing I prefer in a cookbook is when like you have the recipe and the picture next to it is what you're cooking. That's not necessarily the case in here. Sometimes there will be 2 or 3 recipes, and then there will be like a spread of photos, and it'll be like, this one's on page 97, this one's on page 98, this one's on page 99, which is fine. Not my favorite, but it is a way you can make a cookbook. So all to say, this is definitely a keep. This is a cookbook I've had for a while. The Soul of a New Cuisine by Marcus Samuelsson, a discovery of the foods and flavors of Africa. So I love Ethiopian food. It's one of my favorite types of restaurants to go to if I'm somewhere and there are Ethiopian restaurants around. Like, that is high on my list. I love it. I just love it. But it's not always super accessible to me. So because I enjoy it, but also because I can't always necessarily get to a restaurant all the time, I was like, you know, I should get a cookbook about this. I'd like to learn how to make some different things. But in my experience with this cookbook, I don't know, maybe I should give it a second look, but it just really, it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. It wasn't specific enough in some ways. One thing I remember not liking about it is, so injera is a like flat pancake type bread, if you haven't had Ethiopian food before, that is used as a utensil. It's also kind of used as the thing that you put all the different stews and dishes on, and it absorbs all the flavors. And it's a key component of Ethiopian cuisine, but it takes some practice and some time to make. It uses a fermented dough, so there's a few days involved in the process, and you know, it's not something that you're just gonna like make like that. But in this cookbook, I remember like getting to that section for the injera recipe, and it's kind of like, well, you don't want to do all that, but here's a quick version that you can make instead that's kind of just as good. And that's not really what I personally wanted. Like, I want you to tell me how to do the thing, or give me 2 versions. Like, you could give me the version that's like, this is like kind of the really traditional way to make it, but also here's another way you can do it. I don't think cuisines need to be like kind of locked in and like you can never change anything, but especially when it's something that's considered so key, from at least what I know, it's considered a key thing. I kind of wanted at least the option to make the thing that took a little bit more time. So I'm looking at the recipe right now. It's talking about how important injera is and how it ferments for 3 days, but it says, my version maintains the nature of injera but streamlines it to be doable in American kitchens by offering the option to substitute different flours, adding baking soda for leavening instead of doing like a starter that has wild yeast, and adding yogurt in to get that sourness that you get from fermentation. Like I said, it's interesting, it's a choice. I'm not against it, but I kind of wanted both. So this is a donate for me. Now, on the flip side, this book, Ethiopia, I got recently. And this, I have looked through it. I haven't flagged recipes to cook from, which again is part of the goal of this process, to get me actually using the cookbooks I want to use. Has both. It has a traditional recipe, it has kind of a quick recipe, and I think it looks amazing. And it has a great section in the beginning that explains all kinds of different ingredients if you're not familiar. This is by Johannes Ghebreyesus. I'm not pronouncing that correct. I should have looked it up beforehand. That's on me. But this I think is a good one. So this is a keep. And this is also a keep. This is another recent purchase. In BB's Kitchen, recipes and stories of grandmothers from the 8 African countries that touch the Indian Ocean. So this isn't country specific, it's kind of regional, but a similar, you know, a similar aspect of being from a particular place, particular style of cooking. And it kind of goes by region. And I love the idea of like, it's like family recipes, like the things that your grandmother makes. I love that element of it. So this is a keep. Did I say who that was by? This is by Hawa Hassan with Julia Tershin. And then we have this subcategory, I'll call it, which is all of my Korean cookbooks. I've gotten really into Korean food and making Korean food, so I have several cookbooks here. 2 of them are Mangchi cookbooks. Mangchi is a popular, probably one of the most popular Korean food, English language cooking channels on YouTube. So a wealth of information, this woman. And this is her first cookbook, this is her second cookbook, both great. I use them often. So these are keeps, highly recommend. This is Korean American by Eric Kim. This is a newer purchase, came out this year. This is his cookbook where he has essays as well as recipes talking about Korean food and growing up as Korean American, and you know, about how food connects to identity and family. And one thing I love about this is he talks about throughout the book is like, you know, Korean food isn't one thing, Korean American food isn't one thing. These are the recipes from his family, the things he loves, the things he likes to eat, and he is Korean American, so that means the recipes are Korean American. But it doesn't mean that it's representative of everything that Korean Americans eat or necessarily applies to every person who is Korean American, but it's his recipes. It's the things that he likes to make. And he talks a lot about growing up in Atlanta and how that influenced the types of things his family had access to, or the types of substitutions they might make, or the types of combinations they might make based on what was available and popular in that region of the US. So wonderful. That's a keep. And then this is one that I'll put in the keep, but I need to like look through it a little bit more. This is LA Sun by Roy Choi. And this is a book that I got as a gift from someone else who had it in their collection, was like, you know, I'm not using it that much. Would you be interested? And so I was like, sure. But I haven't spent a lot of time with it, and I don't know a lot about it because I didn't shop for it or purchase it or ask for it. It was just, you know, gifted to me by someone else. So this is one that is going to be on my look through, and then with some more detailed evaluation, I'll be able to make a decision about that. But right now it's going to be a keep. Okay, we're getting to where like the categories are getting less and less specific. I feel like this is just kind of like general cooking vibes. I don't know, we're putting them together. So the first one here is Better Homes and Gardens cookbook. This was a textbook for me in college in one of my cooking classes for my dietetics degree. And this happened to be a breast cancer special edition. So it's pink, but usually this is red. It's a common one you'll see, at least here in the US. So this is fun because it's a binder. So you can pull, and it's tabbed by category. And I love this as a reference. Like if I'm trying to make a recipe that's kind of like a basic thing that there could be 100 versions of, like pancakes. You're like, well, what pancake should I make? I always look at this as like, okay, this is gonna be a very general version. What do they say to do? And then I might look at other recipes and be like, okay, how are these different? Which one do I wanna try? But I always look at this one. And it also has a lot of instructional things about like, this book taught me how to make a lattice pie crust topping. So there's, you know, food safety things and different tips and tricks and things you should know, and in each section. So this is a keep. That there. These are 2 books that I acquired that I don't know anything about. They're both 2 Nigella Lawson books, which everyone loves Nigella. I'm not as familiar with her work and haven't cooked a lot of Nigella Lawson recipes. This one is called Forever Summer. I don't know, these look good, but I'm like, am I going to make them? I'm a little intrigued. Okay, I'm gonna put this on the keep, But again, this is gonna be that like, you gotta sit down and look at it and actually see if you wanna make any of this stuff. And this is Instant Italian Inspiration. This actually looks pretty good. There looks like there's some nice dessert recipes in here. This will also be a keep if I, oh, the jacket's coming off. Come on, friend. Let's not fall apart on me here. All right, we'll keep that. The keep pile is really starting to outpace the get rid of pile. Like I said, it's not a specific number I'm trying to get rid of, so it's okay, right? I don't have a cookbook problem. This is, okay, I'm excited about this. This is the Ottolenghi cookbook. I was familiar with Ottolenghi as like a name in cooking and cookbooks, but I didn't know anything about this one, and I saw it at the thrift store for $2, and I was like, I think their Ottolenghi cookbooks are supposed to be good, and it looked pretty good, so I got it. And first off, look at the cover. That's pretty. But it just seems to be a lot of great recipes from looking through it that, I don't know, they look delicious, they look very flavorful, they use a lot of like herbs and produce and things, which I love because I love plants. So this is a keep. All right, this is another one that I received, but I don't know much about. The Clatter of Forks and Spoons by Richard Corrigan. This one, I mean, kind of like the build of it. It seems nice. I have flagged a recipe when I looked through in the past. Ooh, Thai crab and mussel soup. That looks pretty good. Maybe it's worth keeping on just for that. Not a ton of pictures. This is a little bit kind of on the edge for me. There does seem to be a lot of seafood, which I love seafood, and I'm always looking for more seafood recipes. This is, I need to make a separate pile probably for the keep, but maybe get rid of. This is one of those. I need more time, and I won't subject you to me like sitting here for 2 hours and reading every recipe in the cookbook and flagging things. This is Leon Naturally Fast Food by Henry Dimbleby and John Vincent. Not sure if I'm saying the first person's name correctly, but that's it. What is this even about? This doesn't really necessarily look like my style of cooking. I don't think the recipes look bad, but as I look at it, it's either stuff I know how to make and so I wouldn't need a recipe for, or stuff that's like, I mean, that looks fine, but I don't think I'm gonna be making that. So this is gonna go on the donate. Maybe we can make more room here for a second stack of donate. This is called A Platter of Figs and Other Recipes by David Tanis. Another cookbook that I received a while ago. I kind of looked through it and tabbed some stuff, but I don't quite remember what. Vietnamese cucumbers, that sounds good. Grilled halibut and Indian spices with yellow tomatoes. Okay. Has an avocado salad that looks pretty good. So these are the things that I at least flagged when I looked through it. I think we're gonna make this a keep. This one, Good and Cheap by Leanne Brown. So this is one that I got, you know, again, through some method. I didn't buy it, but I actually heard an interview with the author recently on Virginia Soul Smith's podcast called Burnt Toast. And she had this author on talking about this book and how it was initially made to be kind of like a cheaply made book that could be like a resource for people who are like trying to cook, are trying to eat well, but have to do it on a tighter budget. And it was supposed to be the kind of thing that they could just make a bunch of and could be given to people and like really like a resource, but not trying to be like a big commercial success. But then it like became a big success. And so then the author recently wrote another cookbook as well. But I love things like this that, I don't know, are focused on helping people or meeting them where they are. Like, it's not about making something super fancy or like complicated. It's just like, you need to eat, here's something you can make, it tastes good, and in the case of this cookbook, it also fits within a certain budgetary constraint. Really cool. So this is not one that I think I will personally cook from a lot because it is more general purpose. And again, I'm really into like very specific flavors, cookbooks that really go deep into one specific flavor palette or a cuisine. But with that said, this looks like it has some like great information that I could at the very least use as a reference, even if I don't cook a lot from it personally. So this would be Mickey. Okay, we're getting down to the last few here. So First up, we have kind of like food preservation cookbook. So I have this one, Fermented Vegetables, by Kirsten K. Shockey and Christopher Shockey. And this is all different types of fermented vegetable recipes, a book I was really excited about at the time, but haven't actually cooked from a lot. But it looks like it goes by ingredient. This actually looks interesting, and I feel like I love fermentation as a preservation method. It is something that you don't have to have like it's not canning, you know, which is a whole other thing. And it does take up some room in your fridge, but it also tastes really good. I love pickles. One of my favorite categories of food is pickles. So this is gonna be a keep. Jam It, Pickle It, Cure It, and Other Cooking Projects by Karen Solomon. So food preservation, but this is about not fermentation. But it also has things like your own marshmallows, making beef jerky, for example. This is one that I feel like is not something I'm gonna be using a lot. So we will send this off to someone else. Okay, next category is baking. So we have the Betty Crocker Cookie Book. I think I got this at like a book, discount book sale. Oh, the back of it has been through some stuff. The most delicious collection of cookies ever. So this is all cookies, which I enjoy baking, but I don't make a ton of cookies. Like I make cookies, but maybe not enough cookies to have a whole cookbook that's just about different cookies. Yeah, I think this is like, these might be good recipes, but not for me, for someone else. So we'll go over here. This is Peter Reinhardt's Whole Grain Breads. Peter Reinhardt is like a well-known name in bread baking, and I've had this book for a long time, and it uses a delayed fermentation process to make most of the recipes. I've cooked several of the recipes in here, and they're good, and I think I will keep this. At very least, it's a good reference for when I want a recipe, but you know, just kind of like a wealth of knowledge in here. So this is a keep. I think, let's make an edit here. So this Better Homes and Gardens cookbook is, because of its shape, I think it's gonna send the whole pile falling. So we will put these here, and then I'm just gonna put this on the side, and we can add it to the top at the end, because we do not want a situation where I'm talking to you and then all the books behind me like fall to the floor. Okay, last baking book is Dessert Person by Claire Savitz. Someone, if you watch cooking on YouTube, you very well likely are familiar with her. I love this cookbook. I never thought of myself as someone who was a baker or made a lot of desserts. It just felt like, oh, like I can do that, but it's not really like where my skill is. Like I have a hair in my eye. But this book, I mean, it's exactly what she tried to do. It's just, everyone's a dessert person. You can bake things, you can make desserts. It's so good. There's so many great recipes in here. So many recipes that I'm like, oh, this is my go-to recipe for this thing. Almond butter banana bread in here. Great, I just made a loaf this week. It's delicious. I made several recipes out of this for like Christmas and Thanksgiving. There's a great tomato tart in here. Y'all know I love a tomato. We got tomatoes in the garden. I'm buying them up at the farmer's market. I love a tomato. The tomato tart, it's great. It's a great recipe. What else? Brownies. There are brownies in here. Use malted milk powder. They're amazing. They're amazing. Everything in here is good. It's all delicious. I've made so many things, and there's still more to make. Get this book. It's a good book. And she has another one coming out this fall, which I will be putting on my Christmas list. So this is a keep. I cook from this a lot, and it's taught me a lot of things. Final section I'm calling Indian and Indian adjacent, or like South Asian. So this is the Indian slow cooker by Anupi Singla. This was one that was recommended to me and Jason, I think in college, as like a good Indian cookbook. I haven't used it that much though. Jason and I both really love Indian food. We both just love eating. It's one of our favorite things to do together is try different restaurants and eat different foods. So we're a good match in that way. But with that said, I haven't used it that much. And from what I've learned about making Indian food since I got this cookbook, I feel like maybe the slow cooker just isn't gonna be the best tool for making Indian food. Not that it can't work, but I also don't see myself going to this cookbook very much. So that makes me think It's in the donate for someone else. This is the Curry Cookbook. Does it have an author name? I got this at TJ Maxx for $7. Apparently the sticker's still on the back. This I have not cooked from ever. The font on the titles is really scripty, which makes it hard to read on first glance. That's the first thing I'm noticing. It's not really calling my name, and if it's not calling my name, that means I'm not gonna be cooking from it, so we'll put this here in the donate. Next one is The Spice Route by Chris and Carolyn Caldecott. And this, I think, yes, I got this at a book fair for $7.50. So it's kind of a brown spices. And it has some like map of the spice routes, because it's called The Spice Routes. Oh, imagine that. The Spice Routes takes the reader, whether armchair traveler, weekend cook, serious foodie, curious culture vulture, on an exciting journey, an exotic journey. Interesting choice of words. Few can ever replicate in real life through the spices, antiquity, the cuisines, the ethnic customs and geography, and the age-old recipes. So this is like a trip around the world of spices. Okay, so it's divided up by region. Yeah, see, to me it's like, do I want a section that's like the Americas, and there's like a Mexico section, Peru, and it's just like 2 recipes from that country or that region. I feel like if I wanted any of these things, I would be better served getting a cookbook that's about that cuisine rather than this, which is like a best hits around the world according to these 2 people. So this is donate. Next up we have Best Ever Indian Cookbook. This is a pretty big cookbook. This is interesting. So I got this cookbook when I was in my dieting phase. And at that point, I would only buy cookbooks if they had the nutrition information for the recipes, because I had to know, like, how many calories did it have, all that kind of stuff, which obviously is not the best way to pick a cookbook and is a sign of a problem. So when I got this, I wasn't necessarily looking for the best Indian cookbook. I was looking for an Indian cookbook that also had nutrition information. With that said, I don't know that it's a bad cookbook. I haven't cooked from it as much as I would like. It has a lot of pictures of like techniques and processes and like stages of the recipe, which I think can be great in a cookbook. And some of these things look pretty good. So I think this is going to be a keep, with the understanding that I need to look through this, especially since I don't have any other Indian cookbooks currently in my collection that I love. That makes me even more inclined to keep this. And you know, maybe in the future there will be a different cookbook that comes along that augments this or even just like kicks it out of the collection. But for right now, I think that's going to make that one a keep for me. And we'll add the Better Homes and Garden here onto the top. So final count is 32 keeping, 16 we're unhauling, but this might go down because there are a few in here, like we talked about, that like I can't really tell yet, but I need to like just sit down and like spend some time with them, and then I'll be able to make a decision. So I think we'll probably get closer to 30 or maybe even less once I do that process. But I think that's pretty good. You know, getting rid of, even though it's not a ton, getting rid of cookbooks that I'm not using, I think is a win. And we've got some good things in here that like things I currently cook from, things I used to cook from a lot and kind of forgot about, things that I want to cook from but just haven't been making the time for it, things that are key reference books for me or maybe have sentimental value. So all of that I'm very happy with. I'm happy with this mix. And of course I'm always looking for new cookbooks to add. Not that we're trying to like expand even further. But now we've gotten rid of some, it does make me feel a little bit better if there is a cookbook that I really am interested in about getting it, because I know I've kind of gotten rid of the stuff that's been taking up some space on my shelf. So that's it for the cookbook haul. I hope you enjoyed this, found it interesting, maybe gave you some inspiration to do some decluttering of your own cookbook collection. But I would love to hear in the comments about any of these cookbooks, if you personally have cooked from them and what you think of them, as well as what are some of your favorite cookbooks that you love cooking from, because I always like to hear about new cookbooks. I love to hear about the things that are helpful or interesting to you when you're cooking. So all that stuff is good, and I know it's good for everyone else in the community too, to find out about new resources that might be super helpful for them from someone else who has already used it. So with all that to say, it's been fun. I'm gonna get these back on their shelves. I hope that you are having a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.